Welcome to the Foothills, a Colorado lifestyle and real estate podcast featuring mountain home real estate broker Robert Martin, who has over 25 years of experience assisting clients reach their goals and move forward. Tune in each week for a dynamic conversation with experts, Colorado adventurers, and residents that explores the ins, outs, and specific nuances of buying the perfect mountain home or selling your dream home in Evergreen, Conifer, Bailey, and surrounding areas to catch a glimpse into the Colorado lifestyle that's a part of you.
Welcome to the podcast today. Our guest is Christie Greene with Wild Awarians. How are you, Christie? How are things today?
I'm doing well this morning. Thank you so much.
Good. That's great. Well, tell us about yourself and your background.
Sure. I moved here from Tennessee in 1986 as a recent college graduate, and I was offered a transfer with my job, and I'd never been west of the Mississippi River. And I felt maybe like an adventure would be fun, for a couple of years, head back home after. That was in 1986. And it's been more than 2 years. Yes, a little bit. I discovered Evergreen in 1989 and decided that this would be the place for me. And I felt very lucky and fortunate to have discovered it. Now, at the time I moved here, there was not the kind of wildlife that there is now. And I bought a house in Highwan Hills at the time, and we rarely saw elk at all. It was a very rare and special occasion compared to today. And so I think what I loved about Evergreen was, I love the lake and Elk Meadow, what's not to love. And then just the amount of wildlife, the more time I've spent here and the number of years that have gone by, just seem to have brought more and more wildlife into our area. So I think it's great, but it presents its own challenges.
Why do you think that is, Christie? Why now more wildlife than when you came years ago?
I don't know. I can't really point to actual figures of numbers of animals other than that the elk herd has increased dramatically. As a matter of fact, the elk herd got so big that they ended up bringing the number back down to a manageable, what they consider, they being Colorado Parks and Wildlife, a manageable number. But I think part of the issue, frankly, is that we're spreading out into their territory. So you get bears, mountain lions that used to have their own dedicated areas that now we're building houses in there. So it's kind of on us to learn how to live with them because they're going to do what they're meant to do. And they're going to be wild animals. And we're the only ones that can change our own behavior. So I think a lot of it's just, there are just more of us up here. And guess what? We've got a couple of golf courses and people love to plant, their flowers and put up bird feeders. And so there's a lot of reason for wildlife to want to stick around Evergreen.
It's so very right. We do have to learn how to live in their habitat. And I know over time, the migration patterns change, specifically for elk and deer, as far as with development and different roads and that sort of thing. And so why did you decide to start Wild Awarians?
So I'll go way back. So I moved to Evergreen, like I said, in 1989, and there weren't a lot of animals being hit on the roads, but things got worse, right? Or better, depending on your perspective. But Highway 74 was broadened and rerouted, and we have more cars on the road. And so about 2014, I starting to notice the amount of wildlife that was being hit on the highway. And I reached out to Colorado Department of Transportation, and I started just asking them questions and getting reports from them and developed a relationship with them. So skip ahead to 2019. And in November of 2019, there was kind of a horrible incident of a large number of elk that were hit on Highway 74. It was a foggy night. A lot of elk were right in the middle of the road when cars were coming. And so you can imagine that the community really erupted about that, as we do, rightly so. And also, sure. I personally had, I would drive up along 74 and hop off on the frontage road there by Hilltop
Mm-hmm.
And over a period of 3 days, I saw 2 different elk that had been hit in that same location, same exact location, but 2 elk. And the second elk, when I saw her, I really just pulled off the road and I, looked at her and I thought, somebody's got to do something about this. It's not just okay to let it happen and shrug it off. So I kind of looked at her and I said, I'm going to do what I can, because guess what? I've lived in Evergreen for 30 years and I've been talking to Colorado Department of Wildlife, which manages Highway 74 for, 5 or 6 years by then. And so I kind of knew I would be the person who would have to start Wild Aware. And so that was 3 years ago as of yesterday.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Can you talk about Wild Aware, what you guys do and some of your programs?
Sure. So again, we started out based on trying to manage Highway 74 wildlife vehicle collisions. And so we worked with Colorado Department of Wildlife, Colorado Parks and Wildlife on these issues. And there were some things we were able to do. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things we cannot do based on terrain, land ownership, and this sort of thing in Evergreen. So in the meantime, we've also expanded into other areas. We just started a barbed wire removal program, which is taking off. We also do what's called our Wildlife Watch program at Evergreen Lake. And, you live around the area, you understand that in the spring, the elk calves love to swim across the channel and have their calves there, or the elk cows have their calves there. And it creates a lot of conflict with people who want to walk around the lake. And so we started this program with Denver Mountain Parks and Evergreen Audubon. And we have volunteers that go, and we are there in the spring and the fall to help our visitors who come from other countries. They come from Denver. Very few of them know much about wildlife. And so we were able to work with them, teach them, and also sort of help them, stay out of the way of the elk. And so, a lot of conflict that goes on there. So we try to do that. We also recently started a yard sign program. So you might have seen our yard signs are all around town. They're even getting up into Idaho Springs and further towards Conifer, but they're kind of brightly colored signs that have silhouettes of wildlife, and they're meant to get your attention and try to have you slow down. So those are some of the things we're doing. We also like to talk to the community as often as we can. So thank you for making that happen.
I think I have seen some of your signs around, and that's so true, Christie. Just an awareness of how we can, be cognizant of what's going on and their natural habitat. Do you actually have people, let's say, around the lake that might meet people there and just kind of talk to them a little bit about what's going on? If, like you said, that specific time of the year when some of the cows are calving, that sort of thing, and just kind of make them aware of what's happening around them?
We sure do, because there's a lot more than just, the elk at the lake. There are a lot of other issues that we need to know about in the Evergreen area. When we have volunteers at the lake, we do bring out items from the Evergreen Audubon Nature Center. So they've been a really great supporter of the program, and actually are more or less running the whole thing. We love them very much. But some of the other things that we like to talk to people about living in Evergreen would be things like if you have a problem with mice or voles or something like that, and some people want to turn to poison. It's very common, but what we suggest is to find other ways to deal with these kinds of pests or problems, because if you do use poison with these animals, they can also then get eaten by, an owl or your neighborhood fox or something like that. And so we'd like to find a way to help people work around those issues. The other issue that we really started to work on is barbed wire fencing or decorative fencing. So really, if you're buying a house up here in the mountains, the house comes with a barbed wire fence, you can really think about if you need that fence at all. And if you don't, if there's a way that you can take it down, and we're actually going to start offering our group to come out and potentially remove the barbed wire for you. We're looking into that. We've also worked with Denver Mountain Parks on removing barbed wire at Dedees Park, which is of course right next to Evergreen Lake. So the elk wander through there quite a bit. And
I know there are some properties that have been around for years and they weren't developed. And there's old barbed wire that's possibly laying on the ground, or maybe it was used many, many years ago, but it kind of gets forgotten. And
It's quite
and
ubiquitous out there.
yeah,
And,
for sure.
initially put in for cattle management. And so people would need to put up barbed wire around their own property to keep the cattle out, or
Yeah,
out state. So
that's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
but so
my
there's a lot of ghost wire that we would love
yeah,
to remove. Yeah.
my father-in-law, who his family settled in eastern Colorado in 1896, years ago. And that's what he said. They put up a lot of fencing, but there were people that were running cattle all over the plains, and they would put the fence up to keep the cattle off their property.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, exactly.
Not interesting,
So
right?
yeah,
And
very
the
much
other
so.
thing that happens is that people love to put up beautiful decorative iron fences. And some of these fences have, they're spiked at the top. And unfortunately, deer and elk can try to jump over those and can't always make it. And so we're also trying to reach out to our community to think twice about putting up that kind of fence. And if you buy a property that has that kind of fence already there, we'd love to talk to you and work with you on how to mitigate that.
Those are really great points. I mean, it's something you may not think about. Maybe a beautiful fence, but it may be a bit of a hazard, and maybe you're not thinking that. Plus, I think most of us have some sort of varmint, whether it's mice or voles or something, and just to be aware of how you address that issue at your property, and what happens in the cycle of life if you do it that way. So
yeah,
that's
and
a very good point.
There are tools, that you can use. There's integrated pest management. If you do a little bit of research, you can find ways to, mostly try to find ways to make the animals not feel very welcome in the first place.
Yeah, I've tried to do some live catch traps, and unfortunately this summer we caught a couple of chipmunks, and it must have been squealing during the night, and they chewed through the seal on the garage door to rescue the one. So I guess sometimes that happens,
Yeah, we really do
So,
the best we can. We really try to
yeah,
work the best we can. So there are ideas about how to sort of, tell them you don't need their company right now. So
yeah, for sure.
but
And I'm sure what you do, Christie, is it somewhat complicated working with the different agencies and interest groups, getting things accomplished?
I would say that because, I volunteered for Parks and Wildlife. I volunteered with them off and on for over 30 years. And I've known, like I said, CDOT since about 2014. So I think our relationships with those organizations is very strong, and they show a great amount of respect for my team. And I think when they have told me this, one quality that we have at Wild Aware is we don't judge people. If they make mistakes, or, we don't really know the whole story, we don't judge them. We're simply trying to educate the community on how to prevent these sorts of things from happening. We feel that people move here from Denver or out of state, and they don't know a lot about what goes on here with wildlife. So we like to catch them, when they get here. We actually have a relationship with Neighborhood Welcome. I don't know, Jennifer Shipley. And she's been handing out our flyers for, 2.5 years. And she's given out thousands of our flyers. And so we're getting people now coming back to us and saying, oh yeah, we know about you, and we know we're not supposed to feed wildlife and leave our trash out. And, we need to bring our bird feeders in at night. So it's very gratifying to know that our work is making a difference.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Giving people the benefit of the doubt, and just knowing that a certain amount of awareness of where they're now living, it may be quite different from where they came. And, it's like anywhere else you want to go. You want to be educated about your neighborhood and where you're living. And that's just a great way to do it, and kind of roll it out in a way of, with an educational awareness kind of platform.
Right.
So why is it important for wild animals and humans to be able to live together in peace?
Well, of course, the number one issue is safety, right? And so animals can cause harm to us, and we can cause harm to animals as well. And so what we really try to promote is letting animals live their lives and be wild, because if we feed them, for instance, this is a very common mistake people will make out of not being educated. If you feed wildlife, you're doing a number of things. First of all, you're bringing in animals in kind of under false pretenses, so to speak. They're not usually in nature kind of gathering together. I'm thinking particularly of mule deer. You don't normally see a herd of mule deer like you might elk, and they kind of are on their own in small groups. So if you put out food, you might get a whole lot more of them together. And when you do that, they can actually spread diseases to each other. So you're actually endangering them from that standpoint. Also, guess what animal loves to eat deer the most?
I would say mountain lions.
Yes. Okay. So if you're bringing food in and you're bringing in the deer with the food, guess what else you might be bringing in? So you might want to think about if you want to bring mountain lions into your neighborhood, and if that's a great idea. It might not be. Also, animals that are fed by people become habituated to them. This is something that is hard to get past here in Evergreen. Our wildlife is pretty habituated. The elk really don't have a lot of fear of people. But that being said, it's important to try to not allow animals to become habituated to the extent that you can. So, for instance, probably the biggest issue around habituation would be bears. Bears will eat whatever they can eat, and in the fall they eat 20,000 calories a day as they get ready for hibernation. I mean, that'd be fun,
everything.
right? But
yeah.
How are you going to?
That would be fun.
It would be really fun if you could sleep it off, right?
Survive.
But they'll come and they'll hit up your bird feeder, your grill, your trash. And what happens then is they're coming closer and closer into your home. They might break into your car, get into your garage. And once they encroach on your space more and more, then they become really a danger. And when they start breaking in your home, then they become a danger. And that's when Colorado Parks and Wildlife, might have to do something more drastic. So what we like to tell people is, please haze animals. First of all, keep everything put away out of their reach so that there's nothing on your property that's drawing them in the first place. And then if you do see them come around, bang pots and pans, yell, turn your car alarm on, anything that you can do that startles them. Yeah, from the safety of your home. And also report them to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, because they don't know that there are bear issues unless we call them in. And if we call in the bear issues, what they will do is work with homeowners on education of what they should be doing to haze the bear or, not provide food for the bear. They don't run out and put down the bear. The idea is that you call them and let them know what's going on, and they will help educate people to actually prevent a problem like that. So
I'm sure they would be aware too that maybe that there's bears in the area or have been spotted, that sort of thing. Right. You had mentioned, Christie, about the mountain lion. I live in Conifer, and we have more mule deer, more deer than elk. We do see elk occasionally. We had a deer that was maimed a few years ago on our property, and then it passed the next day. And so I pulled it up to the road, and I was going to have it taken away. And the person that was going to take it never showed up. The next night, we had found that a mountain lion had drug it down into some rocks and probably fed on it for, I would say, about 2.5 days. Very efficient, ate pretty much everything except for the hoofs and the skull. Yeah, most of the ribs and everything.
That's fascinating.
So it was, it really was. And I went out at nighttime.
Circle of life yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have any idea of what happened to the deer?
Well, I don't know what happened to the deer. I thought maybe it got hit by a car. I'm not sure, but it was maimed and couldn't use its rear end, and so when my wife and I we were out hiking on our property, and we saw it, and it tried to get away, and it just couldn't move. So we kind of left it, and then the next day I pulled it up to the property. But for about 2.5 days, the mountain lion fed on it, and I went out in the middle of the night, like at 3 and 4 in the morning, and I could hear this crunching. It was pretty fascinating, actually. Yeah, and then a lot of other animals came out. I could see, and there's lots of birds and different things. But within 2.5 days, it was, the carcass was totally cleaned, and I just disposed of that because the first thing in the morning, our dog would run down there, and I just, I wanted to
Bring
just
up
get
a
rid of it.
bone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Bring
That's
up something.
actually, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the most important messages that we've been trying to share is there is a number that you can call. You can put it in your phone, or I don't know if you can remember it, but it takes you right to non-emergency dispatch. And we use this for animal wildlife emergencies. And this number is star 277. And you can call that number 24/7. It's kind of like a 911 dispatch center, but you would call it if you saw, for instance, a deer in your. I would mention that one thing we're all guilty of, because our animals are so habituated here, they don't react to our presence. So it's very easy to get too close.
Right.
And so you got your camera and the animals are eating and they seem, they're ignoring you. But in fact, they are wild animals and they run really fast. They run a lot faster than you think. And so it's really important to show respect for their space. And you've heard of the thumb rule. If you can't cover the animal up with your thumb, then you're too close.
Okay, I haven't heard that.
Sometimes
That's
it's
good.
hard to even do that here in Evergreen, but certainly I've had issues sometimes when I've sat in the car, I'm sure you have, and the animals, or they come towards you and they're surrounding your car. And as long as you sit quietly in the car, they might not even register that you're there. They might work, or else maybe they'll hit your car with their antlers. You just never know. But it's really important for people to know that these animals can be super dangerous, especially during calving. You hear reports of the very aggressive cow elk. They will attack you. And also the bull elk, of course, in the fall will also attack you. So
also the moose, the moose.
Yes.
The mooses. Yeah, I heard
and
they
they're
could
coming.
Yeah.
They're coming. I just had a meeting with Jefferson County Open Space last week, and she said the moose are coming, and they're much more dangerous than the elk in a lot of ways. And also I just learned that other than most other species, when there are human beings like encroaching into the woods where they live, they will go away. They will leave the area, but moose will tend to come in closer to people because it kind of also keeps the predators away. So yeah, I just heard that.
Oh, that makes sense for their, for
Right.
them and their survival.
It
But
does.
I've heard from so many that they're just more unpredictable, and it can be fairly dangerous to get close and just certainly keep your distance. I like that thumb rule. That's a good one.
Thumb rule, and it's hard when you're walking along and you come up on an animal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Down the way, or you walk out your front door.
Yeah.
And an animal there, but moose are definitely very dangerous, and we in Evergreen are going to have to get used to the idea that they might be out there as well. I'm kind of excited about the idea, actually thrilled.
Yeah.
But it's definitely another area of living here that we need to be aware of, for sure.
For sure. Another awareness point for you guys and for all of us. So Christie, with your programs, have you seen that the number of animals that have been hit on Evergreen Parkway has lessened? I know there is one place there that there's a place where the elk can go underneath an overpass there. How have things, how have you been able to maybe limit that a little bit?
Well, honestly, that's a really tough one because we don't have control over people's driving speeds.
Sure.
And over their level of distraction. Unfortunately, we can't control that. We also can't control the elk and when and how they cross and how long it takes them to cross. The numbers fluctuate so much that it can be very difficult. For instance, in August, there was an accident on Highway 74 that involved 6 to 7 elk. Well, 6 to 7 elk can totally blow, any statistic that you have for what you're trying to do up here. So it's very hard to measure the impact of what we're doing by simply counting roadkill numbers. what I would say is the more we continue to bring awareness to the problem,
For sure.
and also where the accidents are most likely to occur, we hope that people will know to slow down and look around more. For instance, there's a fence that goes from Kerr Gulch and it goes all the way down to Brookline Road, or right about where Elk Meadow is, just past the bridge at Buchanan. And there are not as many animals that get killed along Highway 74 from that. But because of that, there is an underpass at Phileas Park. That might be what you're thinking of.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's no fence at all the rest of the way to the lake. And so what you see is animals that want to cross from Elk Meadow or coming up through, over Lewis Ridge. And then a particularly dangerous area is from Hilltop on 74, right at Hilltop, all the way down to the lake, but particularly by Stagecoach Park and also by Speedway. Those are the worst areas in Denver, or in Evergreen, for hitting elk. And sometimes on a regular basis or over time, the history of the roadkill numbers is that 1 out of every 3 elk in the Denver metro area are killed in Evergreen. 1 out of every 3 elk that are killed in Evergreen.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's a big number.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, it's just a matter of being aware, and speed is really important too. I mean, sometimes you could be traveling very slow and the speed's not going to be consequential, but I would say generally, being aware of that is going to be more helpful than not. The speed at which you're traveling, that sort of thing.
People really need to slow down. People drive
sure,
with their blinders on really through town. And Highway 74, people do consider it kind of a commuter highway. It is a 4-lane highway, but it is also the heart of our town. It's the main arterial way that people get around through this town. And there are, not only animals crossing, there are people on bikes, and there are people walking, and there's just a lot going on. And really, people just need to be able to see all those things and give themselves time. So we suggest really scanning the roads at all times. Obviously, not driving distractedly. Drive the speed limit. It's okay. People might pile up behind you, but it's okay. It's within your rights to go the speed limit. So be brave. Take a breath. Drive the speed limit. Also, when you see elk in the road, stop. It's okay to do that. If people pile up behind you honking, it's okay. You're in the right. Okay, you're doing the right thing. Wait for the elk. If you try to honk at them and break them up, to find your way through them, it's not going to help matters, because you're just going to try to bring themselves back together and make everybody wait longer. So if you can wait, let the whole herd pass. Life is good. Keep going on your way. It's just a few minutes. We live in Evergreen. It's part of living here.
Yeah, that's so true. I try to, remind myself it's just a wonderful thing about living here. You have elk crossing or deer, or every once in a while you might see a bear, and it's where we live. It's part of the wildlife and the living in nature. So just embrace it. But I think that's a really good point, Christie.
Some people get very angry.
Yeah, that's it just seems like sometimes people have to kind of slow down and remember why they moved here for the most part. So if I was moving to the area, Christie, what might be some things that I should consider when I'm buying a home here, also living amongst the wildlife, but maybe some other things that you might bring to someone's attention if they're purchasing a home in the area?
Well, I guess Wild Aware is really, educating about wildlife issues and things around that. So one thing we might suggest is, if some people maybe don't want skunks or mountain lions, caching dead deer, these sorts of things around their homes. So we'd like to recommend that people block off potential little spaces, like under a deck or a porch, that might hide away a little family of raccoons or something like that. Better to keep the animals away and out than try to deal with them after they come in. Definitely feeding animals is a big no-no. If you try to feed deer, for instance, you can really kill a deer if you feed them corn in the middle of winter. Their bodies are not meant for that. So you may feed them deer because you love deer and you feel like you're doing the right thing. But the truth is you're actually harming the deer, and the deer could eat the corn and then go down the road and die a very sad death. That's very painful. So we really want to encourage people to kind of understand the difference between, loving wildlife and wanting to bring them in towards you, or loving wildlife and wanting them to live their best wild lives. There's a little bit of a distinction there. Try to think about the animals' needs to stay wild. The number one problem in Evergreen is trash. And so people, if you don't have a garage, you should definitely look into a bear-proof container. They are available at a very low cost from some of the trash haulers. You can also purchase them. And you might be able to find, a place that would give you a grant or donate a can to you. But that's really of the highest importance in this area, because once a bear realizes there's food at your house or in your neighborhood, they will come back over and over, and they'll hit every trash can along the road, kind of like a all you can eat, 24/7 buffet. So
for sure.
Actually bears would prefer that Wild Aware isn't, putting out the message that we have, because we don't want to feed them. They want to be fed, but we don't think it's a good idea. So it's also damaging for bears to eat food for other reasons. One is that, eating people food and trash is just not a healthy way to get calories. And also there's a study in Durango that bears that were fed or were allowed to eat trash would actually hibernate less time. But the problem with that is they're not able to, they age faster. Their bodies aren't able to sort of go through a repairing sort of process that you get when you're sleeping. And so they don't get the benefit of that extra rest. And so it actually takes away from their lifespan.
Yeah, they're eating maybe too much or the wrong stuff.
Too much of the wrong stuff.
Leftover cheeseburgers and stuff like that. So
they will eat diapers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I get that. So a lot of really, really great information, Christie. I really appreciate it. So if people want to dig in a little bit deeper, what's the best place for them to go to get more information on Wild Aware?
We do have a website. It's wildaware.org. You can also reach us through our email address, which is info@wildaware.org. And we always like to recommend, if you do have questions about wildlife, we like to encourage people to go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife website. And if you do need immediate help regarding wildlife, this could be an injured animal in the yard. It could be a bear, looking through your kitchen window. It could be hitting an animal on the road or seeing someone hit an animal on the road. Call that star 277 number. That's a really important number to have. Put it in your phone.
Write that down. 277.
Star 277.
Yeah.
There are great people on there. They'll do what they can to help.
That's great. Yeah, I could use that a couple years ago. And is there anything, Christie, that you'd like to add that we didn't cover today?
Have us out to talk to your neighborhood. We'll come talk to your HOA. We'll talk to your book club. We'll talk to your school. Whatever if there's a way that you can have us share this information, we'd love to do that. So
that would be absolutely great. The schools, just to have, the classroom to share with the kids as well. So, well, thank you so much, Christie. I very much appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You bet. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
To the Foothills, a Colorado lifestyle and real estate podcast. On the podcast, I interview real estate experts, Colorado adventurers, and residents who enjoy the serenity and lifestyle of living in our mountain communities. Tune in each week for a conversation that explores the ins and outs of buying the perfect mountain home or selling your dream home, and catch a glimpse into the Colorado lifestyle that's a part of you.